Well, hello everyone. I've chosen my historical context to be the colonisation and revolution of Haiti. To subject into a critique form the perspective of hybridity and the transition Haiti went through from being a homogeneous society, transitioning into a heterogeneous society. This presentation will focus on the fallacious belief that the more diverse a culture is due to miscegenation, the less pure it is. Reference to the French and American oppression of Haiti will be enlightened throughout and the impact that neocolonialism has had on the Haitian society. Prior to 1492, the island of Haiti, which later was called Hispaniola by Christopher Columbus, was a peaceful society consisting of the indigenous Taino population. Upon the discovery and settlement of Columbus on the east side of the island, and the arrival of French pirates on the west side changed Hispaniola in history indefinitely. The dehumanization and political struggle oppressed upon the indigenous population was becoming a European modernity throughout the New World, and post-colonial theorists have proved this by examining how colonialism has been advanced and resisted throughout its history. As a summary, historically of how Hispaniola became Haiti and the Dominican Republic, we notice not only neocolonialism, but also the exploitation of the indigenous population and exploitation of African slaves to gain profit for France through coffee, sugar, cotton and tobacco production. Paul Meredith talks about the third space in his research and development paper and refers to Homi Bhabha's notion of hybridity in an ambivalent concept. Bhabha reveals to us an insight to the idea of hybridity in a colonization setting, referring to it as such a form of liminal or an in-between space, where the cutting edge of translation and negotiation occurs, which he terms the third space. The colonization of Haiti by the French, in essence, transformed the homogeneous population into a society of heterogeneity as a result of race mixing or miscegenation. This concept comes as a price to the local indigenous population in the form of a double oppression. One being that women are being sexually exploited, and two being that the introduction of hybrids creates another level above them in the hierarchy. Further to the idea of French oppression, it is well known that in the third world countries during colonization and also in today's social context, the lighter your skin is, you had more privileges. This is basically just the third world we're talking about here. The same concept was prevalent in Haiti when the insidious idea that if white men were to produce offspring with local Taino women, they would in turn develop a new race called the mulattoes, which in turn is effectively hybridity. One of the key reasons why the French implemented this scheme was to introduce a race that was still higher in status than the Taino population, but lower than the oppressing French, so that they could still go back to France and leave these hybrids, or mulattoes, in charge, whilst still keeping power over the slaves in their absence. Because of this belief at the time that hybridity is a representation of a loss of purity in the blood, they still had to answer to the French oppressors, but could still have full citizenship and own their own slaves. According to Professor Matthew Spark, in his paper on Haitian history and struggle, Spanish colonist Bartolomé de las Casas, upon arriving in Hispaniola in 1502, stated, "It was a general rule amongst the Spaniards to be cruel, not just cruel, but extraordinarily cruel, so that the harsh and bitter treatment would prevent the Indians from daring to think of themselves as human beings." And obviously with this sort of barbaric treatment, the slaves and those on the bottom of the hierarchy in Saint-Domingue, which is what Haiti was called before the independence, they will inevitably revolt as the social context begins to unravel. During the late 18th century, with a slave to settled population ratio of 10 to 1, a conflict erupted as a struggle for control of the colony between French Republican forces and Creole royalists backed by Spain and Britain. Both sides had recruited indigenous armies of black slaves, free blacks and hybrid mulattoes. So both sides of the fighting had, all of those people in them. Up until the late 18th century, there were many rebellions in Saint-Domingue. Because the entire population of Taino Indians had been wiped out by the early 16th century, the slaves that the Spanish and French had imported from Africa were revolting. Because the prevalence of neo-colonialism was so strong, this rapidly increasing heterogeneity of Saint-Domingue was changing the social context in such a way that the slaves and other members of the lower hierarchy saw no option but to rid the colony of its metaphoric parasites, which in this case were the colonists. So with this theory in mind, the desire for a pure homogeneous society grew, and in 1791 the first successful revolt against the French occurred, which evolved into a revolution that finally succeeded in late 1803. By 1804, the country changed its name to Haiti and was the first ever republic formed from the basis of slaves from a victorious revolution. Post-revolution, the expectation of peace among the people did not come as was initially hoped. In response to this loss of land and plantations that the rebels burned, France demanded high money compensation, or else they would attack Haiti and wipe them out. This compensation crippled the economy, and did so right up until the end of the Second World War. Even today, Haiti is one of the poorest nations in the world, and the unrelentless fight for power still continued among the blacks and the mulattoes. As a result of hybridity, the social hierarchy was always at war, and one coup would follow another. As the fight for freedom did not stop there, during the First World War, Haiti went through a second round of imperialism. This time it was America who sought to stop the violence and wrote a new constitution in Haiti. The struggle for power has continued up until the 21st century, as the long-lasting effects of imperialism from France and America continue. The hybrid identity is a position within the third space, as a sort of, lubricant in conjunction with cultures. According to Barber, this third space is an ambivalent site where cultural meaning and representation have no primordial unity or fixity. This theory is useful when analysing the heterogeneity developed in Saint-Domingue, and thus provides a spatial political idea that initiates new signs of identity within the oppressed people of Haiti. Because hybridity carries connotations of impurity and inauthenticity, we notice an imbalance of inequality of power relations between the settlers and indigenous population. This third space evidently is the very thing that disrupts the binaries between the lowest level in the hierarchy and the highest level of French colonists. Because of this, the problems occur when miscegenation is too rapid to account for the imbalance of crossbreeds to purebloods. The exploitation of natural resources such as coffee and sugar, as well as the sexual exploitation of women, was the result of European American modernity in shaping the hybrid third world. Postcolonial theorists have examined upon how colonialism was both advanced and resisted through various forms of cultural representations throughout the New World discovered by Christopher Columbus. Of course, Haiti is no exception to this. Paul Farmer argues that the liberal political imagination has rarely included the powerless, the destitute, the truly disadvantaged. It has never concerned itself with those popularly classified as the undeserving poor, welfare recipients, or the homeless, to name a few. Farmer's narration of Haiti is informed by a clear recognition of all the ways that Haitians have revolted against dehumanization and second-class treatment. The history of Haiti's transition from a slave colony to a post-colonial republic is incredible, in that it was the very first successful anti-colonial resistance. The story of the Haitian Revolution provided inspiration for many other post-colonial and anti-racists ever since. It inspired other colonizing countries in Africa and Asia that these slaves can revolt and they can rebel against these colonial colonizers. Tracy Kidder provides an excellent and insightful summary of the account. The landing of Columbus on the island that he named Hispaniola, and the extermination of the Arawak Indians that followed, who was also called the Taino Indians. The division of the island between France and Spain, which left the French in possession of the island's western third, where they created an immensely lucrative and gruesome slave colony. A third of every new shipment of West African slaves died within 3 years. A whole third. The slaves' long and bloody revolt, which began in 1791, and which not even Napoleon and 40,000 troops could put down. And at last, in 1804, the creation of Haiti, Latin America's very first independent nation and the world's first black republic. The post-colonial theory of hybrid modernity expanded the Euro-American concepts of freedom and progress, which was quite radical for its time. And I've just got a little video here to show you that I thought was quite relevant in terms of showing a visual representation of the Haitian independence and revolution of that 12-year period where they fought back against the French and took over their own country. So yeah, just sit back and watch that.
On December 6, 1492, Christopher Columbus planted the Spanish flag on an island in the Caribbean inhabited by the Taino people. They called their island Haiti, or the land of mountains. Columbus renamed the island Hispaniola, or Little Spain. The Spanish cruelly enslaved the Taino people to perform the back-breaking labor necessary for the establishment of their colony. As a result, the Taino population was decimated within a few short years.
Saint-Domingue had been the most brutal of Europe's colonies in the New World, and the most successful, until a violent slave revolt in 1791 had changed all that, releasing hundreds of thousands from their bondage and overturning the plantation economy.
Haiti is always described as the poorest country in the Western Hemisphere. But during its height at Saint-Domingue, it was the richest place in the Americas. The thing about it, though, is that its richness was all rooted in slaves. Its wealth was based on human capital, on owning that human capital.
In what respects was the Haitian Revolution of the late 1790s and early 1800s a critical global event?
Well, today we see the Haitian Revolution, which destroyed slavery in that island, which was a very powerful institution, and which established the second independent nation in the New World after the United States. We see it as part of the age of revolution, the age of the American Revolution, the French Revolution, and the Haitian Revolution. And it was as important as the others in some respects. Certainly it struck fear throughout the Western Hemisphere among slave owners and their supporters. The idea of the slaves rising up en masse and actually overthrowing the system of slavery was the great nightmare of slave owners everywhere, including in the southern United States. On the other hand, it was a source of inspiration to black people all around the world. In Africa, in Latin America, in the rest of the Caribbean, in the United States. Here was a group of black people, slaves, who asserted their own freedom, who claimed their own freedom. So, in other words, the impact of the Haitian Revolution rippled out from Haiti, a small island, to influence the whole Atlantic world really well into the 19th century because of what it symbolized, both for the vulnerability of slavery and for the aspirations for freedom of the millions of African American slaves.
So the first two declarations of independence in the world are the American and the Haitian, right? These are the first two texts of that type, and yet they couldn't be more different in a sense. They're very different in tone. One crucial difference is that one of those, one of them, the American, is written at the beginning of a war, in a sense, and the other is written at the end of a war. I think in the broader sense, though, what's interesting is how fundamental Haiti was towards the kind of progress of anti-slavery in the long term. Now, there's debates about immediately what effect it had on British abolition and French abolition and so forth, but there's a way in which the Haitian Revolution had kind of fundamentally changed the conversation in a way that is kind of irreversible. I mean, after the Haitian Revolution, you have kind of established as a very strong argument that there's simply no way to claim universal rights while continuing to maintain slavery. The Haitian revolutionaries had kind of, I think, pushed forward the kind of idea of universalism in a fundamental way. And afterwards, everybody has to kind of reconfigure their arguments in some ways in relationship to that. And they're going to often represent Haiti in either positive or negative ways as part of their own arguments about how slavery should be dealt with. In the United States, that's very much the case. And in fact, Haiti is referred to constantly in the debates about slavery in the United States in the 19th century.
In the summer of 1789, when Haiti was still the dormant colony of Saint-Domingue, it was France that grabbed the world's attention. Parisian mobs rioted against the French king and against their own desperate poverty. Chanting slogans for liberty, equality, and brotherhood, they sparked a revolution that would fill history books for centuries to come.
Liberty, equality, fraternity, that was new for the world.
Toussaint Louverture is the epitome of humanity. He realized early on that the condition he was in was totally insufferable.
Toussaint Louverture recruited about 3,000 to 4,000 people, trained them, and they fought the French, the British, and the Spanish army for 12 years.
They burned the mechanisms of their production. They're burning the plantation fields, burning down the houses.
It was a wholesale massacre on a really, really enormous scale. It was a big, major payback time.
The Haitian Revolution is probably the most profound revolution ever realized by human beings. The only place where slaves created a nation.
Yeah, so that video is just kind of to show you pretty much what Toussaint Louverture did when it came to the Haitians being released from the shackles of French imperialism. And yeah, I thought it was relevant and it was a good, I guess, visual representation of what actually happened and the effects that hybridity has had indefinitely in the Haitian culture. So in a country that has been rocked by violence, political unrest and natural disasters, there is still a sense of happiness amongst the culture. The post-colonial theory of hybridity is evaluated as having a significant impact on the Haitian society, the Haitian social context. Through neo-colonialism, Haiti has become the nation it is today and is one of the poorest nations in the world because of it. So that brings me to the end of my presentation. I hope you've learned maybe something or hopefully enjoyed a bit of it. I look forward to listening and watching your presentations and I guess transferring notes and hopefully you learned something and I'll see you later.